Okay, so what we just listened to was Ragged Old Flag by Johnny Cash. As you can tell, there's a little bit of a bias going through our previous classes with some Johnny Cash theme. That's been my latest thing that I've been into. I know you're all looking at me like, what do you mean Johnny Cash has been around for all these years? What do you mean you're just getting into him now? Well, you can see the generational difference between where I stand. But what really interested me was at this time of year, we just had Israeli Independence Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut. Yom Yerushalayim, the day that Jerusalem was captured by the Israeli government, is coming up very soon. And from the American side of things, Flag Day is in June, this coming month, and July 4th as well. And Memorial Day. When's Memorial Day? That's the end of May. Oh, very good, Richard. Thank you. So Richard points out that Memorial Day is at the end of it. So basically, we are in the zone right now where we are hearing, whether it be from our brothers, sisters in Israel, from the Israeli side of things, or from the American side of things, these are the months where patriotism, national identity is very much on our radar. And what I want to, we've been doing is more of like there's been a Monday night class where we do contemporary halachic issues. We're not going to go so much into the halachic literature over here. We're going to keep this a little bit more discussion oriented. But a question that we may want to raise is, I think many of us here, we're all Jewish, or we identify at least with some sort of Jewish values. And what does it mean to be a Jewish person, a religious person? It's not even just a question for Jews. It could be a person of any religious orientation, to have an allegiance to God, but to have allegiance to a country as well. Having allegiance, whether it be to the United States of America, having some form of allegiance to the Israeli government. And what does it mean, to have, a claim that's usually made against American Jews is dual loyalties, dual allegiances to United States and to the state of Israel. So these are like a lot of questions that are personally on my mind come this time of year. But before getting into some of the critiques, the arguments, I thought starting off on a more positive note with Johnny Cash would be a nice way to open up the session. So let me ask all of you, if you were to make an argument for the significance of a national flag, in particular, of course, Johnny Cash is addressing the American flag, what is your sense of what his argument is for why the American flag is considered so sacred within American tradition? And bonus points if you could figure out what Johnny Cash, what motivated him to write this song in particular. Okay, so open discussion. Gloria, you sound like you got.
Yeah, well, I think that American flag is so vital and so important to the American people, so they know, because thank God, many young people have not been part of what went on, have no real knowledge of the wars that preceded and so on and so forth. And I think the flag there, and without, if they see the flag, they know it stands for something. And if any education and they've been taught, just hearing about it or reading about it is great. But when you see that flag, you know exactly what they were taught, what he or she was taught, and why. And so I'm all for that flag being there and standing there. And this is the first time I heard what Johnny Cash said. I was not at the previous classes, and I really think it's so relevant. And this way, if, like with anything else, if you can point to the American flag and say to your grandchild or a younger person, you know what this flag stands for, and so on. If you just tell the person it's important, it's great, it's fine, but when they see the tattered flag or whatever, they know that this is why they're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. So succinctly, what would you say the American flag represents to you?
Freedom, peace, sacrifice. I could go down the list.
Well, I think the final word is especially important, the word sacrifice, because I think that's really the theme of this piece over here, where Cash is basically talking about all the wars it's been through, and of course a flag in general. I mean, you could just say, oh, it's a piece of cloth. I don't know if you ever heard of you probably heard of Nechama Leibovich. So her brother, some know him infamously, but her brother Yeshayahu Leibovich, he was a philosopher living in the early state of Israel. And he's like, the flag is just like it's a schmat on the pole. Like that's what he wrote about it. But really, yes, it's dear. In reality, it is a piece of fabric that is hanging from a cloth. But it's what it comes to symbolize that is what is important. So to Cash, what he emphasizes here is the sacrifice that was made throughout the ages. The American flag represents the blood that was shed by those who served in the military, those who served in wars, in order to secure the freedom and liberty that we have today. I'll turn over to Richard in just a moment, but one idea I want to share, Rav Soloveitchik, when he was asked to expound upon the significance of the Israeli flag, Rav Soloveitchik, he quoted the line in the Jewish Code of Law, the Shulchan Aruch, which says that when someone is martyred, God forbid, when a Jewish person is murdered, al Kiddush Hashem, so the person they don't get the usual form of a tahara ceremony, but actually they are buried in the clothing they were murdered in, so that God can see the blood that is on their clothing, will arouse God's mercy for us and to bring vengeance upon those who committed this atrocity. So Soloveitchik said the Israeli flag is like that article of clothing that was shed blood, but instead of representing the blood of one person, it represents the blood of all those who fell in defense of the land to defend the Jewish people. And so I think Soloveitchik's point is not just relevant for the Israeli flag, but I think it gets at the heart of what Johnny Cash was saying here as well, that when we see the national flag, it doesn't just, to some people maybe represents the politicians. If it represents the politicians, then maybe, depending on your thoughts on the people currently serving in office in the government, maybe you can have some mixed opinions depending on your political orientation. But if what it comes to mean is something more general about those who came before us, and those who sacrificed so we can have the freedoms that we have today, so then it's something that's deserving of our respect. Both Soloveitchik would say vis-a-vis the Israeli flag, Johnny Cash talking vis-a-vis the American flag, but I think both of them are in agreement as to what it symbolizes.
And also, not to interrupt you, Rabbi.
And I was done. Thank you.
Okay, but also the significance of a tattered flag speaks to me and says this flag has gone through so much with so much sacrifice, yet it has survived. And we have survived as a people, no matter how difficult it was. And we should always remember that if we have to stand up for the right and our rights, then we must do that. And that is how, God willing, we will survive.
Very good. I like that. You're saying it's the flag. It's a mushel for the resilience of the American people.
Yes.
Very good.
I want to introduce a contrary thought to
Richard, can't hear you.
Gloria, I agree with what you're saying, that the flag is a symbol of independence, that somehow our 50 states are being held together. It's a symbol of freedom, independence, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, etc. The other hand, we cannot lose track of these wars that he mentions. These are wars that we fought before we became a nation. We were a group of 13 colonies where we felt that we needed to have independence, that we had unfair taxation. And so there was a war of independence, and that war shed a lot of bloodshed. That was even before the flag was really fully established, okay? other wars that we have fought. We fought against Mexico at the Alamo, and blood was shed, was lost on both sides, the Mexicans, and that was a war of annexation, if you will. There is the war that we spoke about. You probably were at one of our earlier roundtables where we spoke about the man to send rain clouds by Leslie Marmon Silko, where the Native Americans are in reservations, and basically many of the wars he doesn't speak about fought under the flag, under Custer and other great generals that we look back upon, were at the expense of colonization, if you will, of dehumanizing a group of people that were here long before we white settlers from England and the continent came here. So there was a lot of blood that's shed there in the name of America, manifest destiny, you want to call it, but there, it's mixed blood, and that's what I'm trying to say. Does the flag represent all of us as Americans? He talks about Chancellorsville, and he talks about Shiloh. Now, Chancellorsville was a battle between the North and the South in Civil War, and that's a battle in which the South won at Chancellorsville. Lee won that battle. The next battle he talks about is Shiloh Hill. This is a battle in which Beauregard, who was a great Southern general, and Robert Lee joining him, lost to the northern forces of the battle of the Civil War. So we have fought against each other, and the question I have is: are we really a unified people? Does the flag represent the melting pot of America? Can every denomination, we as Jews, yes, I totally agree with you, Gloria. My parents worshipped Roosevelt. They worshipped him, even though we know he turned a deaf ear to bombing the Nazi warfare, the Nazi camps, etc.
Right.
But we have to remember that this flag is not doesn't represent all of us, and there is a bias. There's a lot of people. There are a lot of synagogues, for instance. We were speaking about the other day, Reform synagogues that will not allow either American or Israeli flags in because that represents nationalism, and there's a strong feeling today in America against this ultra nationalism, the right wing element of America. As our president mentioned yesterday, we're being poisoned by the haughtiness of the white man looking down upon all other denominations, all other ethnic groups. They feel they're being diminished, that their power is being diminished. So can we say that this flag really represents America, a melting pot? That's what I want to throw out there. And David, do you have any comments on this? I'm sure you've been thinking about this, what's going on nationally. David, do you have any thoughts on?
No, not right now. I want to continue to listen a little bit longer.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Did you have anything on the show?
Well,
Yeah, let me just turn.
bringing the matter of disunity. I mean, there is a great deal of disunity this current day and age, and political polarization. And it's interesting that it's not against the flag. There are different extremist groups that are loyal to the flag, but they're trying to co-opt it for their own very particular group, trying to, isolate all their ideological opponents. And it's very much different from the disunity that we had when I was young, decades ago, during the Vietnam era, when there were a group of extremists that actually were against the country itself. There was something called flag burning, which thankfully we don't have that, any days. This desecration of the flag, putting patches on American flags on these.
I want to just mention here, just to get in, David and I grew up in an area of flag burning, Vietnam War, and many people fled to Canada because they could not support the American flag in Vietnam, where we lost hundreds of thousands of American boys, and we had to pull out in shame. The war in Iraq is another example in our lifetime.
But one thing, at least with Iraq, people, start turning against the Iraq policy, but it didn't translate into this anti-nationalism that we had during Vietnam. It weren't these, this flag burning that occurred then. So, although it's largely recognized as a mistake, it didn't. At least that didn't amount to the same thing. But
and it's interesting that the Supreme Court in a 1989 decision.
Can't hear anything
Yeah, in a 1989 Supreme Court decision,
in here.
Can't hear you, Richard.
ultimate court decided that flag burning is constitutionally protected and it's a form of speech because to take Johnny Cash's metaphor, the ragged flag, many people are burning ragged flags that no longer show all the 50 states on them. You can no longer see the stripes. The Supreme Court reasoned that since Texas allows the burning of ragged flags, if you will, that let's take it another step further. Let's not be blind. If people want to burn their flags as a protest, for whatever reason they have, it's kosher. It's okay. So this is where we're at right now with flag burning. It's a law of the land.
Richard,
Richard, can't hear you.
we just can't hear you.
Yes, I'm just saying is that the law of the land is established now, so that flag burning is okay. Texas said the Supreme Court said because Texas allows people that have old flags that don't have, you can't tell how many stars there are on them, how many stripes, that they're torn, ripped, burned in part. People are allowed to do that. That's protected. So they said, we don't see any problem with people wanting, if they want to take their flag, it's their own property. They're not hurting anybody else. They're not infringing on your rights, if you will. You as an American can still burn your flag. Can still burn your flag if you want to. If you want to furl your flag next door to a flag burner, that's your right. But we have protected speech, and that's the law of the land now. Is flag burning is okay. That's what this is 1989 decision, Johnson versus Texas. I know these are very hot issues, and I have a hard time dealing with them because I know we have, as a country, we've annexed so many states and so many peoples, so many indigenous tribes that it's a horror to know how these reservations have been used to abuse people under the name of American democracy. So what does democracy mean? Are we all really, truly free? That's a question that burns in my heart. Yeah, no.
Burns in your heart. I like that. So right, precisely. I think this whole flag burning question is actually what Johnny Cash is referring to in the third to last stanza in the second half, where he says, so now they've quit waving her back here at home. In her own good land, here she's been abused, she's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And the government for which she stands is scandalized throughout the land. So I have to look at the precise year that this was actually written in. I'm not sure, but it seems to be in reaction to, maybe it wasn't flag burning yet. I think the Supreme Court decision that said it was constitutionally illegal to burn a flag was maybe 1990, 89. So 89. Okay. So right. So it was around that area. Though, may I borrow the source packet for a second? So I want to point out something interesting to you. Is that generally, coming back to the, what we live in right here to Gushel, the modern Orthodox community, we kind of put the American and Israeli flag in the same basket. And you'll see this oftentimes. You'll find shuls that have an American Israeli flag, and you'll find shuls, especially more right-wing ones or very far left ones, that don't have any flags. But what's interesting is actually some rabbis who supported having an American flag in shul, but not an Israeli flag, and then some vice versa who support the Israeli flag, but not the American flag. I want to point out to you, so basically there was Rabbi Victor Miller. He was a very major right-wing thinker in in Brooklyn. Yeah, I know I put too many sources in here. And thank you. Oh, do you want to read it? Okay, so what Richard will read from us, basically we're going to hear from Rabbi Victor Miller. Now, you'll notice this is, it doesn't sound so eloquent because basically he didn't write a lot, my understanding, but he spoke a lot, and then some dedicated students basically listened through his tapes of his lectures or his musings, and they transcribed it. And so this is a transcription of an oral discourse that he gave. And what I wanted to think about is how he relates to the American flag and how differently, almost, in an opposite manner, relates to the Israeli flag and what his rationales are. So, Richard, you're going to offer to read.
Yeah, so here's the byline of his podcast, his tape. More than tolerate American flag, it represents a gift from God. Okay, so the question is, what should our attitude be towards the phenomenon of flag burning that we've been witnessing in recent months? Okay, this goes back to July 1990. Keep that in mind. Okay.
Right, so right after the flag burning happened, this was a reaction.
Gotcha. All right, his answer. Up until now, American Jews were too busy to think about patriotism. But we must realize that today flag burning has become one of the symbols of the vandals who want to break down all the principles of morality and a way of demonstrating disloyalty to the country. Okay. We have to appreciate America. America is a very big bracha, a blessing. What we have here is a luxury. There is so much freedom and so much opportunity to make a living. Gloria, my parents, and me too, and all of us have that sense. America is like a big ice cream cake. And therefore, when a person is given a very big birthday cake, or let's say a very big Yom Tov cake for high holy days, with lots of ice cream and lots of toppings, and he's putting his face into the cake and eating, and he's getting smeared with ice cream, and then he says, "Oh, what a bother this is, what a mess." He's complaining. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, says to him, "What more could I do for you, my friend? I tried." Okay. America is such a big cake of happiness, and you should appreciate what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you. And therefore, we have to be very displeased with those people who go as low to burn the American flag. The flag is a symbol of all the privileges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us. I think that's the end of his, us in this country. And therefore, it's not a bad idea, even if you've never did it before, to hang out a flag on the 4th of July, lahachis ha-risha'im, to get the angry people angry. Is that
like to
spite the wicked? Yeah, it's not a goyish thing. No, do it lahachis, to show them that yes, we do appreciate what Hashem gave us. All right.
So keep this in mind, that Rav Miller seems to be very supportive of honoring the American flag. He comes out hard against flag burnings, and he even goes to the extent not just to say that one should not burn an American flag, should not get caught up in this new trend, but he says, we're kind of, speaking for his community, are relatively indifferent to the patriotism, nationalism. We're guests here in America. We hope one day that Mashiach will come, Messiah will come, and we'll return back. Everyone will be able to return back to the land of Israel, ruled under the laws of God. But we're grateful to America. But you know what? Because there's such ungratefulness going on, he says we have to go out of our way to display our appreciation, our karsa tov, our gratitude. And so it actually, he doesn't mention it, but it reminds me, there's a Gemara in Makos, in which Hashem says, I'm going to give you so much blessing, it'll be ad sheyivlu sifso seichem milomar dai. You'll your lips will wear out from saying die, like Dayenu, it would have been enough.
Enough.
So like, we say die, God's giving us so many blessings where like we can't handle all the blessings that God gives us. So, Richard, you brought before about how Johnny Cash, he kind of looks at American history through what's it called? A rose-colored lens.
Yep.
So there is a certain degree of what Rev Miller's doing here as well, which is there's a lot of positives America has. And he seems to ignore any potential critiques that might come. Or his opinion is, there are critiques, but the positive far outweighs any negatives that one can bring up. Maybe. But so bear in mind what Rev Miller said, how supportive he is of the American flag, and he encourages also celebrating July 4th, and contrast that with what he writes regarding the Israeli flag. Did you want to read that also? Or? Yeah, so Richard will kindly read that for us.
Okay.
I think this is it, right?
Is this the one, the 5th of VR? So the 4th of July?
Oh, she found that one. Yeah.
So it's moved.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah, both of them. Maybe read both.
Okay.
So read both. They're both 1 year after the other.
Okay, so Rabbi Victor Miller on burning the Israeli flag.
Oh, so I have to give a huge trigger warning, as we do in modern parlance. Rabbi Miller was very anti people who are on the left wing politically. So you'll hear some things in here that you could tell was in an audio recording, maybe off the cuff. But honestly, sometimes the recordings of people you hear off the cuff is much more telling than a prepared written essay where editors went through and took out all of the the egregious remarks. So you're getting the raw information here.
All right, so the question is it a Chilul Hashem? Is it desecration of God's name? What these people did last week when they burned the Israeli flag? Answer, well, they'll tell you it was Kiddush Hashem, it was a blessing to God. Because who said that the flag of Israel has any holiness to it? Where does it say that the Israeli flag is a sacred object? And I'll tell you why it's not a Chilul Hashem, a desecration. Now, nobody has to accept what I say, but of course, I'm not going to accept what other people say either. The Israeli flag is a symbol of Zionism. Zionism is a principle that means something. Zion is not just some political movement. It represents the principle that in order to be a Jew, all you need to do is to subscribe to the idea of a Jewish state. You don't need any Torah. You can be an atheist. You can still be a very good Zionist. And that's where we come in. And we say that's Chilul Hashem. That's the desecration of God's name. When the blue and the white flag is raised, that's what it's saying. The flag is saying that this is the purpose. This is the ideal. This is the justification. And all other things are unimportant. And we say it's not so. It's the flag that is the Chilul Hashem. Because we have only one flag, and that is Torah. Woo. We are a nation because of Torah. Without the Torah, we are nothing but gypsies. We're a polyglot. We're half-breeds. We have all types of people mixed into our nation. But there's only one thing that makes Jews Jews, and that is they are loyal to our Hashem and His Torah. Now, I want to, we're kind of running close to time here, but I want to do a transition to Hatikvah, which is the national anthem of Israel. And the Hatikvah raises these very issues that Rabbi Avigdor Miller is talking about, because namely, the history of the Hatikvah goes back to about 1883, when a man, his last name is Imber, wrote the lines of the Tikvah, and Rabbi Shmuel Cohen, not a rabbi, wrote the melody. Okay, now the Zionist conventions that were meeting, as you know, in Vienna, Herzl, and so forth, they played this anthem there. Herzl was very offended by it. Herzl being a very secular Jew, as you know, he was not a Torah Jew. He was a perfect example of what Avigdor Miller is against. He was vehemently against it, and so they did not adopt it in the 1900 Zionist convention. In 1903 is when the convention was ready to adopt, and they did adopt Uganda as a alternate state for
Right.
Jews to come home to. Kabetz Nidachenu, ingathering of Jews would be in Uganda. And that passed successfully. But what happened was the people that loved the anthem, and they felt that the land of Israel was something more than just land, that it was something that was promised to us biblically, goes back 2,000 years and beyond that. They sang the song to the convention, and so they tabled the motion to for Uganda. So Uganda was a dead duck, as I say. Now this brings me to the significance of the Israeli flag. And the Israeli flag, basically, if you look at the lines of most of us are familiar with it, and you can look it up on your computers. Odlo, what is the word? Tikvatenu. We have not lost the hope. Odlo azva tikvatenu. We have not lost our hope of 2,000 years. So basically the theme, it's only 8 lines, but the theme of the Hatikva is that this is our land and we've been promised it for 2,000 years. And that indicates that these are people that was written not with the Torah in mind, okay? Because the Torah promised the land of Israel to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob going back before the Torah was given. Okay, so the Torah was divine revelation. Okay, so the Hatikva is a secular piece of poetry, and I wanted to refer specifically to the Tikva as a flag. That in our liturgy we have the Amidah, which is the 18 blessings, which is chanted in the morning, afternoon and evening prayers. It's the main prayer of the liturgy, along with the Hero Israel, Shema Yisrael. Now, in the 18 prayers, there's one prayer called the Ingathering of Exiles. And in that prayer, we pray that God, the Kabetz Nidachenum, Arba Kanfos Haaretz, that God should bring back all of the dispersed people from all the lands of the earth. Okay, so that is a part of our liturgy. Okay, and in it says, and we should hold up the banner. Okay, it begins with, we hold up the banner to and blow the shofar. That's what, if you look at it, in the interest of time, if you had it, do you have it on here to show it to? Yeah.
I'll just take 1 second.
Yeah.
Richard, sorry, I must leave.
That's all right. Gloria, I'll see you up.
Sorry, I have an appointment.
No problem.
Not a problem. Good.
Thank you for coming.
Tefillah. Tefillah. There we go. Here. Tefillah. Ashkenaz. Shacharis. Scroll down. Vida. And scroll down. There's the
Okay.
translation. I'll have to share the screen. Just give me a second. There we go.
Okay, on your screen, you have prayer number 10 from the weekday service, the Amidah. Amidah means we stand reverentially. It's one of the few prayers that we do stand at in the services. Okay, and this prayer is called Gathering of Exiles. And basically, Tekal b'shofar, blow the shofar, Gadol, the great shofar, L'cheritunu, for our freedom, which means, and raise the banner, a flag, to gather our exiles. Now, this is a flag that, in the context of the liturgy, has great meaning. It has great meaning. This is the tikva. This is the promise. The flag was a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that their seed would be numerous, and that they would inhabit a land of their own, in land of Canaan, as we know, okay? So this is mentioned in this prayer. And again, in this Amidah, we haven't, this ties in with our, it's too bad Gloria's not here, but we have the last prayer of the Amidah is called Thanksgiving, Modim. And in that prayer, the body of the prayer gives thanks to God for all the wonders that he does in our lives every moment, evening, morning, and afternoon, because the Hebrew day begins in the evening, so that's the way it's set up. So we're thanking God for the blessings, and that's in the current. That's now, because we have tremendous gratitude. We're free people living in a free nation, free speech, and we've never had it so good. So that's what that modim, that we finish the Amidah on a very high note. Now, when the cantor chants that out loud, there is a section in the Amidah which we are supposed to chant silently. And in that silent prayer, there is a reference that God will bring us back from the four corners of the earth into one nation. Now, this raises all kinds of questions, okay? And in the few minutes that I have, I just want to take it to the next level. And that is, what does it mean? Does it mean that we all have to be ingathered? The prophets take this to what's called an eschatological frame of mind. They see this, they take it toward the end of days. And in Jewish thought and philosophy, and especially the Nevi'im, the prophets, they do prophesy the end of days. And as a matter of fact, Isaiah talks about Cyrus, Cyrus being the Mashiach. He was appointed by God to be anointed Messiah, if you will, to allow the Jews to build the second temple. And so from that begins the whole discussion of Messiah and what is needed for the Jewish people to really be at home in their land in peace under God. Okay, now this opens up. I'm taking you guys to a very different level, and this is something that that Rabbi and I could hold a session and many sessions on eschatology. Okay, now I want to raise this question. Okay, what does ingathering really mean? Okay, what does it mean? And does the prayer of the Amidah focus upon a future time when we will have a third temple and when we will have the sacrifices? Because in the liturgy to the high holy days, which of course are Passover, Shavuos, which is coming up in 2 weeks, and then Sukkot, in their Amidah, which is the blessing, it speaks about that God will, God will bring us back together as a people from all the four corners of the earth. And the continuation of that particular blessings talks about the various sacrifices that will be made on each holiday. So the ultra-religious Jew takes the position that Israel is not really our national homeland. It cannot be, because the way that the national homeland will come into being is when a person like Cyrus will be bringing people back. The second temple meant that the Jews in Babylon, in exile, could all come back and worship, and most of them did. Yeah.
Right. So I would just add, an additional point to what you're saying, Richard, that people like Victor Miller, who we've seen, it's actually many of the many rabbinic authorities and theologians followed suit with his ideology. their opposition isn't to the land of Israel, to Eretz Yisrael, but to the current government there, which is Medina Yisrael, the state of Israel. And so in the modern Orthodox world, we tend to conflate both together oftentimes. But the argument that they're making isn't that they're opposed to Jewish government, Jewish homeland. In fact, they actually support that. Their disappointment is that they don't see the current government as a Jewish government, or at least a Jewish government, certainly not governed by Jewish law. And so what they want is, well, if this is God's land and we want to, then it should be run according to God's laws, to God's Torah. So, yeah, and that really explains why people like Victor Miller, on the one hand, he strongly supported waving and displaying the American flag, but he was utterly opposed to flying the Israeli flag. In fact, he seemed to even encourage burning it because the expectation for the United States is not to be a nation run according to 613 commandments in the Torah. In fact, non-Jews are not supposed to keep all 613. They only have Sheva Mitzvah Noach, the 7 Noahide commandments. They're not supposed to be keeping Shabbos. So, but Israel, on the other hand, because it is more sacred, they actually consider it. It's hard not to consider Israel sacred. You read the Torah; it's pretty obvious. But it's the government that they take issue with. And what really dismays them is like, we're so close. We already have Jews that are running the government. Like, why can't you guys just get with the program and then Mashiach could come? So they want the same thing actually as what religious Zionists want. It's just a matter of how do you relate to the current government that's ruling over it. To them, the Israeli flag doesn't represent the Jewish people, doesn't represent God. It just represents a government that happens to be run by a bunch of Jews who are in charge of Israel right now. It's not the first time. You read through the books of the prophets, and we read about all sorts of kings who did not follow the ways of the Torah and who ruled over the land of Israel, and they weren't too happy with those kings. Think of Achav, think of Ahab, those kings. So I think that's really the argument that people like Rabbi Miller made, but I would say everyone is in support of the land of Israel as being holy.
Now, Victor Miller, does he accept the Medina Yisrael?
No.
He does not accept
That's
the government.
exact.
Okay, so he's
not opposed to a government.
Yeah.
But he's opposed to the current iteration
so
of it.
so he is in agreement with these Haredi Jews,
Oh, he is
the
Haredi.
ultra Orthodox.
He is correct.
He is Haredi.
Yes.
Okay. I thought all Haredi Jews did not accept the government.
So there's a distinction.
Yeah.
So you're thinking like Satmar, for instance. So like the Satmar and Turi Karta, that whole I would say a little bit more fringe, I would say, but maybe it's gotten more traction. They in principle believe there's a passage in the Talmud in Ksubos that says that we were sworn not to reconquer the land of Israel until the days of the Messiah come. But so they oppose in principle establishing a Jewish government today. Most Haredim, like Rev. Victor Miller, they're not opposed to the establishment of a Jewish government. They just want it to be an authentically Jewish government.
They're Haredim and they are very much pro-Zionist. So yes, they're very much pro-Zionist, not
Right. So I mean, Chabad is a unique entity unto itself, and I don't know if Zionism can mean, we're talking about flags right now, symbols, Zionism, Judaism. These words mean different things to different people. Now, I think there are certainly for Judaism more objective guidelines, but Zionism, again, I could say I'm a Zionist. I support the state of Israel, and I hope it comes to theocracy. Or I could say I'm a Zionist, and I hope it stays and continues to be more of a secular democracy like America. So two people can say they're Zionists, but have very different visions for what they want the land of Israel to become. So that's.
So Victor Miller is a Zionist. He is a Zionist, but somebody who looks at the government as he wants it more of a theocratic government.
I think. Yeah, I haven't studied Rev. Victor Miller in depth, but my sense is in the more excluding Satmar, but like the more mainstream Haredi world. There is more of a general support for the notion of there being a Jewish state, but it just wants to be run al pi halacha because the whole idea is if it's the Jewish people come back to the Jewish homeland and bring about the ultimate redemption in Messiah, then it's a little funny to bring about God's redemption without actually following the ways of God. So, we kind of want to have our cake and eat it right now.
And again, Israel is composed of a mosaic of peoples from Ethiopia and people of color And there is a great deal of bias in Israel against anybody who is not a Yeki, if you will, or somebody who is yeah, go ahead. David, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This was a tremendously enlightening session for me. Just to put a note of optimism on the pessimistic feelings that we have. There was a historian named Schlesinger at Harvard who said that American history is made up of innovation, periods of innovation and stand-patism. And
Innovation and what?
stand pat.
Stand pat. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
And
really conservatism, really
yeah,
lock step. Yeah.
So the innovation signifies turmoil. And we always seem to go so far, maybe one way, and then we right ourselves and come back to where, you know, a more reasonable, maybe that stand-patism that's important for stability. Certainly, the notion of a flag, you know, you ride along the streets of the suburbs and I see Irish flags, I see Italian flags, now Ukrainian flags. So this country is not truly a melting pot, but a group of different people from different parts of the world who put pressure on our government when there is problems in their home country.
Mm-hmm.
So you see parades in New York if the Turks have a problem or the Greeks have a problem. Now the Ukrainians have a problem. Always for Israel, there have been pressure on the State Department when things go wrong in Israel. So this is really what our government is about, or our country is about. Certainly, when you look at the flag, and I've been in the service during Vietnam, that there is this feeling that it's like a coat hanger of American history. You know, if you look at all of these things, if you read the biography of each president, you know, you get a feeling of what the whole country's about. If you look at each star and see when each state was accepted in the government, in the country, you could see what went on at that time if you read the history of how these states came about or how different parts of the world came about. So the symbol of the flag, certainly in the military, you know, unifies us in a beautiful way. But you pulled everything together in such a perfect, organized way. It was really enlightening for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to make a comment. What you said is very true, that we are a nation of mosaics, if you will. We're little pieces trying to fit in and have our group be heard. Very important. Have the gay parade, Israeli Independence Parade, which is traditional on Fifth Avenue, the gay parade, Puerto Rican National Parade. We have all these different rights, people fighting for their rights. And like you say, the states, each star represents a fight. There was turmoil going on, whether it was Kansas or Oregon or California. There was turmoil, there was wars. Each star represents a war, if you will. And somehow the flag represents a symbol of unity, that we maintain a strong ideal, the idealism. Maybe that's the rock that you're talking about. We come back to these strong ideals of what we want to represent, although we know in our hearts we fall far short.
All right, well, that's a thoughtful note for us to end up on. I think we're at 11:05, but thank you, Dave, for your thoughtful contribution at the end.
Yes,
Thank you, Stuart, as well, for joining us, and for Richard for your preparation, your insights and time. And
thank you.
And if anyone has an idea, excuse me, maybe we'll try to return back to our short story. I've been enjoying the poetry and music, but if anyone has a suggestion maybe for a short story of literature we can do, Nothing more than 10 pages, please. Ideally closer to 4 pages, maybe something we can actually read during the session rather than before. We'd
Or
love
even
to.
if I may, I'm reading a fascinating book right now.
Oh, yeah.
Even a paragraph, reading a paragraph on this book.
That's
Maybe an excerpt from a larger work that you feel we can open up for
Yeah.
discussion.
So if anyone has ideas, feel free to approach us. Otherwise, Richard and I will come up. Yes, Stuart?
One of the major Jewish themes that rabbis often bring up is Lashon Hara.
Yeah.
There's a De Maupassant story called A Piece of String, which is, I think, a paradigm of Lashon Hara.
Good. A piece of string. So, so we can all hop on and take a look at it and be prepared to,
Great.
be a part of the roundtable.
All right. Take care.
Thank you,
Thanks for joining
Rabbi.
us.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Great.